"Please, is anyone out there?" I screamed, my voice fading as nothing but the maddening buzz of mosquitoes replied to my plea. How long had it been since I'd deserted that enemy archer ambush? 3, maybe 4 days? I wasn't sure anymore. The line between day and night was blurred. Vast twisted branches blotted out the sun, shrouding the swamp in darkness. I'd lost any concept of time in this godforsaken swamp long ago. I stumbled throughout the swamp, fatigue gripping at my muscles. The gaping wound on my thigh stunk of rot. I was weak. My lips were dry. I could feel the bony exterior of my ribs. The plentiful bog water and fresh animal carcasses seemed to mock my pain, daring me to take a sip, to take just one bite. But I resisted their temptation, for I knew what lay beneath those deceptively shallow waters: decaying corpses, waiting patiently for me to put my lips to the water and embrace me in the comforting water forever. The animal carcasses were riddled with unnameable diseases. Weeks before the battle, my friend, what was his name? Darren. Yes, Darren. That was his name. We were low on rations, hungry, all of us, like ravenous dogs. He was the first of many to taste the delicacies the swamp offered, and like all of them, he was dead within the next week, cast back into the arms of the swamp to avoid contamination. An agonizing rash spread across his throat, and he died screaming for fresh air. He was out in the open. The gash on my leg itched. My instincts invited myself to further split it with my filthy fingernails for the briefest of relief. Alas, my mind was still vigilant. I resisted. I scavenged the bog, looking for any sign of civilization. A road, a path, even a measly fence would comfort me. Nothing. I screamed in frustration again and again, hoping someone would hear. Nothing. Minor irritations became torturous. Itchy, my wound begged for relief. The mud clasped at my boots, slowing me down. The buzzing of winged vermin clouded my thoughts. The warm air and fatigue made my eyelids heavy, but I knew if I closed them, even for a fleeting moment, I would never wake up. Then a voice jarred me from my torment, a voice from within the swamp. I resisted the pull of the muddy water and sprinted, the various pains that had tortured me forgotten in a rush of ecstasy. I'd never felt so happy, so relieved. I couldn't care less if it was an enemy reconnaissance, looking for deserters to hang like myself. I just yearned for human interaction, to listen to words that weren't my own, to touch skin that wasn't cold and pulpous, to escape this swamp. The tangled roots attempted to trip me, branches snapped at my clothes. It was as if the swamp itself was fighting against me, but I was strong. I broke through the swamp's snatching grasp. As I rushed toward the source of the voice, I hesitated. I could hear my footsteps. The maddening whine of mosquitoes had ceased. The rustling of the branches stilled, and not a living creature would be heard. For the first time since I first stepped into the swamp, I could listen to my own thoughts. Puzzled by silence, I reluctantly approached the source of the voice and suddenly found myself in an open field. Dozens of rotting bodies were submerged in the murky water. I turned over one of the fresher bodies and discovered, with disbelief, that they bared the same military crest as I. What happened here? Why did everything look so damned familiar? I took a step back, examining the scene of carnage. A small hill overlooked the bloody fields, the trees casting long shadows, the arrow-ridden bodies, and the frozen expressions of shock on the corpses. It was a perfect scenario for an ambush. I continued, desperately trying to avoid the gazes of the glassy-eyed corpses. Each of their faces looked so familiar, yet I couldn't possibly explain why. I was certain I'd never met them. I ignored the unsettling feeling and kept searching for the person whose voice I'd heard. Just as I was about to be overcome by despair, I saw him, just standing beyond the fragments of light that escaped through the tree's branches. I beckoned him to come closer, but he just stood there, his face indistinguishable in the dark. Suddenly, he collapsed into the water. I scrambled to his aid, trying to determine what was wrong with him. My eyes widened in disbelief. How hadn't I noticed earlier? The memory was vague, but I remembered his features. Thin lips, exposed ribs, and a gaping wound on his thigh. It was me. Overwhelmed with horror at the sight of the impossible nightmare, I turned away, hoping that awful thing would disappear. When I looked upon it again, mercifully, I was no longer face to face with my own decaying corpse, just a reflection in the water. I got up from my knees and straightened myself out, determined not to let the swamp break me. I was confident I'd find a way out of here. I'd made it further than anyone else. I just had to focus on surviving long enough. Hunger began to tear at my stomach once again, and I began eyeing the corpses greedily. My repulsion towards the stench of festering flesh turned to longing. A bite, I promised myself. Just a morsel. But I soon found myself neck deep in the decaying stomach of a dead soldier, tearing at its sweet skin in gluttonous zeal. Its bloated flesh moistened my lips, and the blood quenched my thirst. This is fine, I convinced myself. Just a necessary action for survival. I went around, corpse to corpse, eating my fill, like a common carrion eater. The wound on my leg, like my sanity, rotted away, making me no different than a corpse. The insects covered me head to toe, slowly nibbled at my flesh, savoring the taste, as I had with the corpses. It was only until my body sunk into the marshy water that I saw through the madness, that I saw the swamp had consumed me long ago.